Okay, I see that the recording has started. I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. And I'll bring up the agenda.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. And approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none.
I do not.
All right, hearing none. Approval of minutes.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Thanks. They were distributed this morning. I apologize a little bit late on that, but they were distributed this morning. So hopefully you had a chance to take a look at those.
Yeah, I did.
Great.
So I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And objectives.
All right. Thank you for that, Jim. I'll take back over with the presentation. And just to remind everyone, and I notice we have a few members of the public. Thank you for joining and participating. This is the meeting of the Tier 2, otherwise known as the Technology and Shared Services based regionalization, with our goal to review that section of the report, the system planning report that was developed by MCP. And a quick note on the schedule that shows this was the last schedule used at the task force meeting earlier this week. Obviously, we are on the 1st of July or 1st of August right now. We have the 3 working groups ongoing: governance, Tier 2 and Tier 3. And those are expected to continue on into August. The Tier 2 I show going towards the end of August, but certainly if we get to the point where we've reviewed everything and have our recommendations, then if we do that earlier, that's great. Tier 2 is, again, technology and shared systems-based regionalization. I'm sorry, is there a question?
No, that was me coughing. Sorry.
Sorry. The goal of this working group is to determine the priorities and potential recommendations related to these key areas of technology and potentially shared systems to provide to the full task force for their consideration. There are about a dozen items shown there, the bulleted items underneath the table. Those are all technology options that were considered in the system planning report and what we have discussed or are planning to discuss at this working group. The ones in green are those that we've discussed at previous meetings, and we have slides for each of those. I'll proceed through those, but very quickly on those so we can get into the action items that were established and the new material. And as a review for each of these work items, we have from the report generated, we have a list of key insights and trends related to that technology area, and then some potential options for improvements for the task force to consider. So proceed.
John, before you move on, may I just provide everyone a reminder about
Please go
the
ahead.
working
Please
group?
do.
So just to restate what we typically say at every meeting is that the options for each of these technology areas that we're reviewing today are based on the planning report developed by Mission Critical Partners, and we're reviewing the MCP recommendations. Those recommendations, as stated, are not the recommendations of the task force. Those recommendations are now being reviewed by these various working groups and the options that were provided, so that this working group can make a recommendation to the overall working group of their findings and recommendations. And so the recommendations that are being and the options that are being reviewed today can be enhanced, either new recommendations by the working group or recommended from members of the public that may be attending. I just want to be sure that everyone is aware that report is not the task force recommendations at this time, and that's what we'll be assessing.
Great. Thanks, Rick. Yes,
You're welcome.
good reminder. And proceeding, and again, these first few I'll go through quite quickly to get to our action items. But first, we discussed CAD, mobile, and ABL. In the green box, we have established at least the working group's preliminary thoughts on preferences for certain options. So this is for CAD coordinated transfer. This is for the enhanced public safety functionality for CAD. This was the previously described preference. For the next couple related to statistics, and we believe Michael's joining us. Hello, Michael. Welcome.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Good. How are you? Glad you could join us. Thanks. We're just getting started. We're reviewing some of the previous technology areas that were discussed in previous meetings, and we'll soon get to the action items we have established, and then we'll have some new technology areas to discuss today.
Sounds good.
And we also discussed previously RMS, and again, the green box indicates the preliminary thoughts of the working group. We discussed logging recorder, telephone, and if there's any of these that the working group members would like further discussion on, please let me know. We talked fire station alerting and paging previously, GIS and mapping, over-the-top applications, non-call processing and dispatch systems, and that's as far as we have made it through our previous meetings. And from those previous meetings, we have established a few action items. Allow me to go into presentation mode to make this a bit bigger, so hopefully it's legible, or at least close. Review the action items. Action item one was for Televate to discuss with Barb Neal about transmission of the Annie Alley data, and I think Rick has an update for us here.
Okay, so I had an opportunity to talk at length with Barb a couple of times this week, and so I've learned, maybe Jim already knows this, but and Michael as well, but the PSAPs, and I know that Martha and others on the line know this, so but it's important to let the community at large knows this, the dispatching community. So the PSAPs have the ability to provide Annie Alley data to dispatch centers on request. And how that is done, it's through the GeoComm application called GeoLinks. And so that application allows them to provide data. Now that data would be viewed on a separate screen. It's not integratable yet, or maybe never will be, to Valcor. But it is delivered upon request. However, the E911 board is going to be migrating away from this platform, GeoComm, GeoLinks, in September. So right now there's no purpose and reason to request that data at this time, since that we're going to be abandoning the GeoComm, GeoLinks platform and migrating to Rapid SOS. And so the E911 board has purchased a number of licenses for Rapid SOS. And what Barb indicated is that they have sufficient licenses for all the PSAPs and a few others, a few remaining. She didn't know the count, but she could get back to me. and that though that additional number of rapid SOS would be shared with the community in a to be determined decision making. Important to note that some of the dispatch centers today have used rapid SOS. So again, the anti-alley data can be provided and can be consumed by CADs, by CADs, and in Hartford that's being done. But there's more work to be done here in terms of Barb and her GIS team are putting together additional information and will be providing that. I also learned that Valcor has been investigating a feature to consume the anti-alley data and make it viewable in Valcor. And there was some preliminary discussions on that, but Barb indicated that Valcor has not gotten back to her team with any insight on it. So we don't really know what Valcor is doing. She didn't know. I don't know if anyone else on this call knows, but at this point, Valcor is not capable of viewing in their map the anti-alley data. I think it's
Rick,
important. Yeah, go ahead.
Rick, question about rapid SOS. So when the E911 board makes the transition to rapid SOS, will that and other dispatch centers that utilize rapid SOS, will they then have access to the anti-alley data through that platform?
No. Well, yes, it can be provided. Yes, it can be, according to what Barb said. But again, it can't, to integrate it into Valcor or into your existing CAD,
Okay.
is how it's, is again, it's not a seamless integration. So, what we really, what the ideal situation is that the data comes over and is directly viewable in the CAD. But that's not the case today. You have to use the E91 viewer, and that really gets us into action item number 2. So again, action item number 2 was what is GeoLinks, and GeoLinks, as Ron provided me a link to it last week, and now I understand what it is. It is a viewer, a GIS viewer that Geocom leverages and that can be used to display anti-alley data as requested from the PSAPs. So again, while we have these capabilities today, we're going to be modifying what data can be provided and how it can be viewed. So that, again, that's going to be, GeoLinks is going to be discontinued. My understanding is in this September.
Thanks. Any questions for Rick on either of those items? If not,
No,
Rick, go ahead.
No, just other than a comment that as Rick said, it's just clunky. It doesn't work well. It's not integrated, and I think there's a cost to it. I think we're using it at our local. I don't know what the cost is, but again, if there's a cost associated and it's clunky, I can almost promise you that not many are probably using it, which again goes back to we want full integration in a CAD the way it should be.
All right, thanks, Michael.
Not only is it clunky, but it also, it's very difficult to navigate through multiple applications on a desktop while you're trying to, take a call, 911 call, dispatch a 911 call. It's just, you're right, Michael, without seamless integration and viewability and not having to, look here, look there, make sure I got the data, it's very cumbersome.
Joe has
100%.
his hand up.
Thank you. I just was curious. There is some data that's been accumulated so far. Is that going to be migrated into the new platform, or will that be accessible, or how will they plan on keeping that data?
So, Elizabeth, will you take an action item for us to follow up on Joe's question? I don't know the answer to that, Joe, but I do have a follow-up call with Barb after she talks to her GIS team. She actually is going to set up a meeting for Televate to talk to her GIS because we better understand the technical aspects of it, where Barb is more operational. Um, and
I just think that with other platforms that are discontinuing, having physical storage versus migrating data over to the platform really should be considered. I know it costs money, but knowing when Firehouse went debunked, we were just giving a disk for all our previous data, and that's just not functional.
yeah, we certainly don't want to lose what capabilities we have, and whatever new capabilities we get should be less clunky. And Liz said she didn't hear because she's on a call. Liz, what we're talking about being clunky is the geolinks, the use of the geolinks application to receive anti-alley data is what we were talking about, and having a dispatcher have to open multiple screens to view that location data.
Martha
Martha's
has,
got a question.
Sorry, I was also interrupted. Thank you for reiterating what it was about. When we get the anti-alley data from 911, it
Mhm.
ports right into our incident, the ad call that we start for whatever the call is. Also, and also at the same time, it also populates on our map where the call is going to be. And it also activates Rapid SOS and puts the call Latin long on Rapid SOS. If that helps. I'm not sure if that's what we were talking about, clunky or not, but it's not clunky for us.
No, it's not clunky for you because you could consume it directly into your CAD system, right?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the benefit of having the CAD. Without the CAD, it's got to be a separate viewer. The GeoLinks is the viewer, and that's
Gotcha.
where you need a separate desktop application. Sorry to cut
There
you
we
off,
go.
Jim.
Thank you.
no, that was what I was going to say.
So Liz Tracy brings up an important feature. CAD to CAD would be great, and we don't disagree. I think I've shared with with the team before. Televate actually developed in the National Capital Region between multiple counties and their dispatch centers the ability to share a CAD to CAD application. And so basically, you post data. The participants in the CAD to CAD agreed to what data they wanted to share and post, and what was meaningful to them, and then it could be consumed by the respective CADs. Now, unfortunately, there has been a company or maybe multiple companies that do CAD to CAD applications, but it's an extra cost, and there's not a direct standard, that has been blessed by APCO for doing, for achieving CAD to CAD. And Martha, you still have your hand up. Something else you want to share with us?
Nope, I forgot to put my hand down. Sorry.
That's all right. I don't want to ever miss an opportunity to let our esteemed public participate. So when I said about the CAD to CAD option, I mean, the one that we developed was not really, I didn't like it, and because every time there's there was 2 or 3 different CAD vendors, probably 3 that we worked with. However, anytime a new feature was released by the CAD vendors, it broke the chain. So, something that you have to go back in and modify the code. It's, that I don't think that's not a very efficient process. So hopefully, and the idea that if we don't have a future common CAD, we're going to have to build bridges between the CADs, and that's just something that'll have to be part of that future CAD requirements definition, assuming that we go in that direction, which I would think that the task force is going to recommend that. Not can't speak on behalf of them, but yes, CAD-to-CAD data sharing is essential.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Action item 3 was closed last week regarding the power phone, now known as total response. And Rick, if you don't mind, please continue with 4 and 5, as those are
All right.
related as well.
Yeah, so 4 is, again, the discussion about how many of the secondary how many of the centers have access to the data. And they, as I mentioned, the PSAPs have the ability to provide that data upon request, but it's again, as we said, it's clunky, and it's now part of I think it's part of ancient history. Even though it's still there, it would make no sense right now to set it up with a change coming. But again, what I'd like to understand is, so that we can be sure that we address it. Are the centers aware of this feature? Even though it's changing, have they, or are they aware they could receive this data, and did they take advantage of it? Now, we know that obviously Martha indicated that Hartford's receiving it. Jim, and your center, you're also receiving that data, and you have those capabilities?
As far as us receiving it into our CAD system, no, because we're on Valcor.
Okay. All right. All right. So, and Barb was very, she was kind of dismayed that Valcor had reached out to her team and had a big, long, had quite a bit of dialogue about, yeah, we can do this. And she hasn't heard from them for months. So we don't know what's going on. But yes, I mean, that we have the ability upon request. I think information flow is important. So if centers don't know that they could receive this data, how are they going to request it? I think the concept of having capabilities is great, but recipients who need this data need to know about it. And I want to be sure that if there's a communication breakdown, that we address that. And I don't think that's done intentionally. I just want to, just be sure that whatever direction we go, interim with a change to Rapid SOS, long term to ideally a statewide CAD, the user community needs to know what is available and how to request it. And if there's fees and if there's, training, all that has to be, provided. And I want to be sure that we don't miss an opportunity to let the community know what's available and to make sure they know how to use it. So now I'm going to number 5.
Yes.
All right. So this is basically, shared mapping data. And the Geocom has a map layer that the PSAPs, using Geocom today have a map. And there is the E91 viewer. So the E91 viewer is again, a separate desktop application that can be used to display location data and to provide, accuracy of location. New facilities, new buildings, new houses, new, as the new roads, as our geography changes. The GIS team at the E911 board makes those updates, and also can consume and use data as provided from the centers themselves. So they can update the viewer based on inputs directly from the centers, the dispatch centers. And so some take advantage of that capability and some don't. But she also indicated that, while you could have various layers, such as, say, fire hydrants, there's certain data layers, and we spoke specifically about critical infrastructure. There are some data layers that the GIS, the E911 board, the GIS department, don't integrate into the viewer because it's not within their charter. However, she indicated that, you could negotiate with them to get the data in. If they have the time, they may get additional data in for a particular agency. But right now, they up the, the E91 board through Ad and Geocom update the maps regularly and can consume data provided from the dispatch centers to update the viewer, the E91 viewer. So again, this is it seems to be a informal, formal process. If a center doesn't know that they have the ability to increase and provide layers of their own information, they're not going to take advantage of it. And so there are capabilities there that can be taken, that we can leverage. And so that's basically how it works.
Any questions on that item? Okay, I'll cover action item 6 quickly. That was discussing the non-call processing and other activities that may take time from away from dispatching for the dispatch operators. This is something that's being considered actually in one of the other working groups, the Tier 3 working group. So far, some of the discussion, there's been recommendations and also received some recommendations from MCP on some of the activities. They could potentially be regionalized, such as admin and HR activities, records or FOIA requests, warrants, etc., could potentially be regionalized. It will depend somewhat on what the regionalization plan is to be addressed by the Tier 1 working group. But as far as these activities, my recommendation here is to close this out and have this handled through the Tier 3 working group. Any thoughts or additional discussion on that?
No, I agree.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Yeah,
So
same.
before moving on, can I just say one more thing? I know we with Martha and Liz here, and I hope they're listening. But I think this communication capabilities that are available to the centers for mapping and anti-alley data, I would think that that the Vermont Emergency Dispatch Association could make this information available to their members so that we don't miss opportunities of awareness of what capabilities are there. And so, of how the data and the knowledge gets out to the community, I think the association would benefit its membership by having the knowledge and sharing it with them. And I'm sure that's part of what what the purpose is. But just wanted to share that with you.
Great, thanks.
And Martha has her hand up, and so
just to follow up on what you were saying, we are actually doing that. We are getting information out and doing an updated, we're doing a training in the near future with all the different resources and availability of software that's out there.
I would assume that was part of it. And, and I think that, we, the E91 board, I'm sure, is going to be cooperative. And as we have an upcoming meeting with you and Liz and Emily, I mean, whatever we can learn and share and provide back to the groups will be very beneficial. I'm looking forward to that. And Joe's got his hand up too.
It's all well and good to have the capabilities, but where are the standards and or expectations for the communication centers to either embrace or have that technology deployed?
Some of that's going to be discussed under another working group that I'm on right now.
Yeah, the Tier 3 working
good
group is
point.
working on
Tier 3.
operation standards.
Right. Okay, anything further, Joe? Or anyone else? All right, now we're prepared to move into our new work items. And the next one is public safety LMR, two-way radio. There are, I think, 3 slides here to capture all the key insights and trends that were cited in the MCP report. I won't go through all these in detail unless there's a specific question, but I believe most people on the call are familiar with what's shown here. The most of the systems throughout the state are analog. There are some digital, being P25 networks, primarily for law enforcement. The law enforcement systems are primarily in the UHF band, fire EMS systems primarily in the VHF band. And also there's the state or the state police system is approximately 40 some sites currently at UHF for the state police. They do have VHF for Fish and Wildlife, I believe. And they have plans via the COPS grant to move forward with a 10-zone digital simulcast system. The zones will be structured per the VSP barracks. The state also operates the VCOM system, which is intended to be an interoperability system between agencies and using the nationwide identified interoperability channels at VHF and UHF. Due to various issues, it's very rarely, if it ever, used. And there was a lot of discussion of that in the report. Also, there was information regarding the Emergency Communications Advisory Board that was created by executive order. Right now, is currently inactive. So with all of that background and all the other information that I'm sure many of you on the call know, MCP put together their recommendation or their options concerning LMR for public safety for the state. So there's 4 options identified here. And I did, for your information, I did retain the one area there that was redacted in the public report. Since these activities are public as well, I had to retain that. Option 1 is building out a system of systems, essentially being simulcast systems of UHF and VHF, consistent with the VSP barracks. That's currently what's being done by the state, by Radio Technology Services, utilizing the funding from the COPS grant. It's currently planned to be done at UHF to support the state police. As the task force members know, there is a proposal from the Radio Technology Services to also explore doing that at VHF, and the task force did approve to continue with the planning of that, at least in the interim basis. Option 2 is very similar to option 1, although it recommends doing simulcast zones based on county borders as opposed to the VSP barracks. Option 3 is one of the higher level options, if you will, to construct a statewide 700, 800 megahertz radio network. It would be digital trunked P25. This would be certainly one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive option. For those of you that don't know, 700, 800 megahertz is more commonly used for digital trunked radio, since it was the most recent spectrum allocated by the FCC. There is more spectrum available, be easier to license, It is paired spectrum, where the VHF spectrum is not paired in terms of um, transmit and receive frequencies. So from a engineering perspective, it would potentially be easier to deploy that, but also the 700, 800 megahertz frequencies do not propagate as far as the lower frequencies, such as VHF and UHF. It would certainly require a significant number of more sites, especially with the terrain in the state. So that is a very uh, most likely to be an extremely expensive option. Option 4 was also similar again to option 1, is to continue the planned expansion by the VSP of the VSP system by Radio Technology Services by adding additional sites, 10 sites operated by the utility Velco, and establishing 10 simulcast zones. So that is again consistent with the plan that Radio Technology Services is moving forward with, at least in the UHF range. So that's somewhat of a broad spectrum of options, although there are some similarities between the various ones. Open the discussion to task force members. Any thoughts or comments?
I'm going to go right out there and say that option 3 is not an option for Vermont. The system planning to do it would be difficult because of our, terrain and number of sites we need and all other kind of stuff. But the other part of it is that the subscriber units, the mobile radios and the portable radios, are a lot more expensive than the radios that you could use on a analog simulcast voting system. And so,
Correct.
Given that there are agencies in the state whose communications budget is in the hundreds of dollars a year, they can't even afford to repair a P25 subscriber unit. So option 3, as far as I'm concerned, we can just wipe that out and look at the other viable options. I think that in reality, the idea of the 10 zone thing works for VSP. It doesn't work in particular for the fire service. I can't speak so much for EMS, but we tend to have a bit more granular sort of regionalization. So the thing that most closely resembles what works for the fire service is option 2. It's not always, county resource sharing, but it's fairly close to county resource sharing, and so that works for us.
Thanks for those comments, Ron. I know, at least from my opinion, I agree with option 3 not being viable to consider. And option 2 is, again, in my opinion, more closely related to how, for VHF, how fire and EMS is operating currently. Could there be a variation on this that would be simulcast systems allocated more towards the dispatch regions, for example, or catchment regions, as I think MCP refers to them in the report? For example, we are aware of some ongoing upgrade plans for some of the areas throughout the state. We have learned throughout this project that there's ongoing development of a system in St. Albans area for the areas they dispatch, in Burlington as well. We learned actually earlier this week of a simulcast system in the St. Johnsbury area to cover the 15 or so towns that they dispatch for fire and EMS. I know, and Joe Allsworth is on the line, and I know certainly Capital Fire is pursuing plans for a simulcast system that covers uh, the towns that they serve, including I think most of Washington County and beyond into Orange County and some others. It is, and certainly from a cost perspective, um, I would say that it makes sense to utilize existing systems that are either currently operating or on the verge of being developed, and to look further at what could be done to support those, and then also to expand that approach to other areas of the state.
So Ron is not going to be able to chat. He had to run to do a pickup. He'll be back shortly.
Okay.
No,
There he
I'm
is.
back.
He's back. There you
Oh,
go.
he's back. Okay, great. Uh,
So,
Jim, Michael, what are your thoughts in
Yeah.
this area?
No, Dom, I was just going to say that before you started, is that integration is key because, as you said, St. Johnsbury is in the process currently of
Right.
I think it's 3 different repeaters with a simulcast system to increase our communication, and so that integration is going to be key to know who's doing what and how we integrate any sort of future upgrades into those existing systems, because there are a lot of statewide upgrades currently in progress.
Thanks, Michael.
I agree that option 3 is off the table. And I would like to see us continue to expand some of the projects that are already out there and some that are planned.
I would be happy to offer for Televate to capture as much data as we can on those existing upgrade plans, and map those out to see where the current coverage areas are planned to support, and then look at where that puts us and where the gaps would be and what additional areas we would have to further development or further develop.
I'd also add that since we voted to continue the design for the VHF portion with the state police, to see where some of those might overlap and we can help in that area through that project.
Exactly. I think that's a good point, Jim. There could be more if we have some of these dispatch areas that are already well covered or planned to be covered for fire and EMS. Maybe we could focus radio technology services efforts more in the areas that would need further assistance.
So just to share, Televate kind of this has been our forte, one of our fortes in our business efforts for supporting public safety communications, to strategize with network operators on how to create interoperability at the least amount of investment requirements under a formal governance agreements, because you can't achieve a regionalization and sharing of assets and integrating them into, say, a future state of a regional or a statewide network without active participation. And what are my benefits for allowing others to use my network, or for me to to have access to other networks? I mean, they're clearly mutual aid and fire EMS is very different than in law enforcement. But a couple of things. One, a simulcast system doesn't have to be based on a county. It can be based on these catchment areas, as Dom said. And I think that's one of the points that these options don't address, that we can create simulcast zones specific to the dispatching requirements of the centers, whatever the future is. Right now, what we have right now is that there are radio networks for almost each agency in a given area. So fire and police have their own, and if there's, if if I'm dispatching, let's just take Montpelier for example, and Montpelier dispatches the Capitol Fire, and they also dispatch to local PD, sheriff, and others, and so this idea, and there are many PSAPs around that have multiple fire departments that they dispatch to have their own radio network. So, what's happened is kind of the Wild West. I build what I needed because nobody was working with me to provide me, concept of integrating my network into a more regional network, and so who pays for that, and who maintains it, and who operates it. I think these are the challenges that we have to face, and it's all doable under a governing structure and some funding, access to funding. So the option 4 here is not exactly what is being advanced, but it's close, in terms of the agreement that the task force, approved to play out the concept that the radio services division is looking at about providing access to up to 50 sites, for a VHF that could be leveraged by local communities. And that's a beginning, because these other networks would have to be integrated into it. And so that's all doable. We have worked with an entire, large scale states to doing this, but it won't be done without a governance structure and without, some additional funding and making sure that whoever does join and contributes their assets, their existing radio assets, see the benefits of it. Interoperability is certainly key. And what we're looking at for
Right.
VHF, for fire and EMS, mutual aid is fundamental in that, and for those responding communities. Joe has his hand up.
Yes.
With respect to the committee, I'll wait till everybody on the committee has had their chance, and then I'd like to make a couple of comments.
Go ahead.
So I guess I would be supportive of option 2. 3 would not be optional for our 28 communities. Option 4 would definitely be off the table because it's a revamping of the whole system. And I think infrastructure and just having the hardware for the locals would be very difficult to overcome. I think there are a couple of hurdles that need to be worked on as we go through, as Capital Fire is working through their project. We found that there's no mechanism to access state tower locations. There is a disconnect between the public safety and the IT group that controls those. I think that needs to be developed fully so that local agencies can take advantage of those tower locations and the microwave bandwidth. That would be huge support to those initiatives. It would also expand the ability for to add additional tower sites, a safety focus on portable communication, especially for our EMS folks and the firefighters that are on scene, to be able to utilize technology to get out. So the man down feature, which is an emergency button to access to the dispatcher, that type of stuff. I know that's in talking with the state radio group, that is one of the limitations for BSP, is that those troopers have to use their mobile radios for adequate coverage and connection to dispatch. They again have spotty coverage on portable and HIP.
Right.
Yeah, I think option 2 would probably be the best as far as what Capital Fire is saying. Long term, it also needs to identify that we are still competing with the Industry Canada for the frequencies, and that those frequencies really need to be sole sourced, and we're having issues with our neighbors to the north and our neighbors to the east. New Hampshire has to have to sign off on those, and so we're really handicapped when it finding those frequencies. The last thing I want to put out too is that the hardware itself, if the state could do an RFP for pagers, portables, and mobiles to have through the BGS purchasing, that would save a huge hurdle for a lot of the municipalities to be able to access purchasing power, and they would not have, it would streamline that. So I would also ask that that would be a recommendation also. Thank you.
I've got a couple of
Thanks for
comments.
that.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I agree that the Agency of Digital Services fiefdom over tower space needs to be remedied. Why the Agency of Digital Services has anything to do with co-location agreements on towers is beyond me. If it had been buildings and general services or some property-based agency, I could sort of make the case in my head. But Agency of Digital Services does not make any sense. What we actually need is a uniform co-location agreement, and whatever agency owns the tower or facility that is that somebody'd like to co-locate on, they essentially look at their needs first, and then if there's a co-location agreement that's okay with them, the uniform co-location agreement that we predetermine, so that every time we do this, we don't have to go back to ADS and get them to approve and beg them and plead with them and jump through flaming hoops to make them happy and things like that. We need to fix that whole situation, because that just doesn't make this an easy proposition. If we move forward with any of these options, we're likely to have to enter into those co-location agreements depending on what the governance model is, and we need to get to a place where we're making rational decisions about co-location on those towers, without having to make individual agreements every time this happens. I will point out, with respect to purchasing at the state level, you may recall that a number of years back, the state put out a grant for tone and voice pagers, and they did exactly that. They put out an RFP, and the company that won the RFP was like some guy who was selling pagers from his kitchen table in Western New York somewhere. And then we were faced with the issue of, how is he going to get all of the information he needs to program all these pagers? Because nobody in the land mobile business is going to go spending a ridiculous amount of time digging up information to give it to somebody else who's making $17 on a pager to sell a pile of pagers. So I caution you that is one of those things that sometimes may fall into the heading of, be careful what you wish for, you might get it.
Thank you,
Can we
Ron.
take a couple minutes to discuss? We've had extended conversations with the community and with Corey Chase about accessing radio towers, and Corey's hands are tied. There are multiple layers of approval that have to be gone through under as it's currently structured to get access, and there are some legitimate concerns about what do you pay and who does the tower loading study, and how to make it uniform. And he's kind of thrown up his, because he doesn't have the authority to change it. But Joe, you're absolutely right, and Ron, you're absolutely right that 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 barrier, those hurdles need to be addressed. And I love the
I agree.
concept of a common an agreement that can be leveraged. I think also Corey indicated that gets so many requests that he doesn't even have the staffing capacity to manage these requests. So from a labor, you have to consider the labor required on his side to evaluate them, to manage, to get access, to oversee the implementation. He doesn't have a formal process, nor does he have the staffing. Because he expects that if even if available, there'll be a flood of requests, and his team is already underwater in terms of what they have to do on a regular basis, their day jobs. So he's concerned that even if available, we'd have to ensure that that we have the ability to administer it, because it'll take some time to administer. So in providing this recommendation, we'd have to come up with how to administer it, for each and every request. One of the reasons that he had indicated that was beneficial for advancing the idea of adding the VHF to the future 50, is it 49 sites? I think it's 49 sites, Tom, right?
Yes, with the addition of the Velco, right.
Yeah, so the future 49 sites that will be in the statewide network was to him was a way around
Right,
providing
exactly.
access. So he was kind of trying to find a simpler way to say, well, if we leverage this opportunity, that the fire EMS could use this channel, whatever channel is eventually installed there, if it becomes a reality. That was his workaround, and I don't think that there should have to be a workaround. As you've all said, we would need a standard agreement that could be leveraged, as well as providing some administrative support to his team, to support the request, and to oversee whatever level the installation has to occur. So I think we'll have to, we should I reckon, this working group should make that recommendation, and that to include, getting a standard agreement, and along with some administration for his team to be able to support these requests. And what's your thoughts on that?
I certainly agree with that, and I agree. I was going to make the same point about unfortunately, right now there is no path to solve that issue of having locals get access to the state towers, and that is one of the reasons that Radio Technology Services suggested the approach that they did of RTS building out and operating the VHF network along with the UHF network, because it did avoid that issue. It has the state owning and operating that system and avoiding the need for locals to access. But I absolutely believe that's something with regards to radio coverage. I believe that that's something that the task force needs to find a way to solve.
I have to say that I think that we need to be very careful about that approach, because it could easily backslide into being another become lifeline system kind of a project that doesn't really work well for anybody. So people either use it for a while and migrate away from it, or they just find ways around it because it doesn't work for them. I think having those sites available, if we put up the VHF antennas and have combiners, and we can access them with some rational, co-location agreement, then that would be a big help. I think that would help in a lot of areas, but I think to start building a network of sites that the whole if you build it, they will come thing didn't work out with respect to the Lifeline system, and I
Right.
worry that it's not going to get the buy-in that we would hope this time either. That's my worry about that concept.
Thanks, Brian.
I absolutely agree with you.
Absolutely. Joe has his hand up. Go ahead, Joe.
I have to agree with that because one, you become overburdened on that single channel in that area, and you have to be careful of that. Um, the other thing is continuity operations and redundancy. For some reason, if that dispatch system is impacted to a point where it's compromised, what is the continuity operations for them? Is there connectivity of able to, trip over to somebody else to be able to do that? I think that's another focus that we learned in the 2017 floods, 23 and 24. And I think that's something that really needs to look hard at is how is that connection made and how is that continuity operations preserved and tested. I think that's another focus that I haven't heard much of that throughout. And I've sit on these groups for a while, and I just like to make that point.
Yes, good point. Thank you, Joe.
So I don't want to abandon this discussion, and so I think it's important. Well, Dom said something earlier about the state would own and operate the network, and I want to be clear on the operation side. They own it to maintain it. And because the grant has some limitations, but operating it was always, the concept there would be operated under a governing body, and so this 49 site option would be a foundation upon which that a regional or a statewide network would be designed and leveraging these sites. I think this is if we look at this as a standalone network, I use it if I want to. It may not be the right way to look at it. It would be more ideal to consider it a foundation upon which we could achieve greater area coverage and not have to wind up with everybody operating their own individual networks that aren't interoperable. So I would caution us not to abandon the thought without thinking about how it could work if we did this, and this, and that's just my perspective, having been doing, knowing how radio exists and works and doesn't work in the state, and how it works and doesn't work in other communities that we have a lot of experience in. And so I personally think this is just a foundation, and I don't look at what RTS proposed as the end all. I think it's a beginning point that could drive us to a committee-based approach with knowledgeable people like Joe and Ron and others that they could leverage to achieve a greater area-wide simulcasted zone selected that works for the dispatch center's radio network.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick.
Joe, yeah.
Joe?
The last thing I'd like to add is that when this all started 5 years ago under the governor's direction, there was to be some sort of longevity of the systems that are going to be developed and in place. And I think as we're doing this, we're like planning for now or the next 2 to 5 years. But what happens when technology ages out and And in 10 years, we need to replace those transmitters and combiners and all that, antennas and stuff like that. So I think a parallel track to also think about is a replacement fund. Also, somehow users, or I'm not sure how that would. I mean, I know we developed one here in Capital Fire, but I think also what happens in 10 years, because what we've seen of having go back to the legislature, the well is dry and there's not much other than outside of what we're seeing here now. And I think that's something also needs to be looked at.
Agree. Thank you.
Actually, a very good point, because we tend to make investments for today and don't consider the sustainability of them for the future, and how, life cycle in this our community changes. And we wind up, building what we have available funding to build today, and not necessarily knowing where the money will come for refresh and for the future. And I agree with you, Joe, that it puts our operational continuity, and we just pass the buck on to someone else down the road who's got to figure it out. So I think whatever solution we come up with would be prudent, so that it's manageable for the future, and that we have life cycle funding and plans, so that we don't wind up having to use old and not functional technology for another 30 years.
Exactly. Any further discussion? I think maybe we need to summarize where we are here, and make sure we've got the recommendations documented. So one clear recommendation was to recommend to the task force that there be a method to allow the state assets to be utilized by locals, to have them get access to towers and potentially microwave, and have a common agreement, if you will, to ease that process.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we need to make it very clear that in some respects our hands and feet have been tied and we've been thrown in the water to solve this problem, because this whole tower usage thing is a mess, and you need to go to the prince to ask permission to marry his daughter when you want to use a tower.
The way it's set up now, you have to ask every member of the royal family before you get to the king.
Well, that's it, and it's really crazy.
It is, yeah. I honestly, I've documented that there's 4 tiers. I'm pretty sure there's 4 tiers. Finance is involved, and DPS is involved, and other agencies. It's not just in one agency. So there are multiple agencies involved who all have want to bite at the apple, because they're concerned about this, that, or the other. So yes, the way it's set up is not a very conducive to wanting even to pursue it.
And we also talked early on of having Televate document the existing system upgrades that are ongoing, that are potentially consistent with option 2, maybe not at the county level, but more at the dispatch or dispatch coverage or catchment areas, to document those and see where that ongoing effort is continuing, and look at ways to build onto or enhance that as potentially a modification of option 2. That'll be an action item for Televate.
So before we abandon this, I know we've been on this for most of the meeting, after we got through action items. And
I thought that's what we would do.
I don't think we'll ever have enough time because we're going to need this is going to take a, major undertaking to agree to what the strategy is. But what we haven't heard from is from our dispatchers, because while the radio networks are obviously used to alert for communications by the responders, alerting to and from dispatch to the responders and back and forth. The dispatchers are having to use a number of radio networks to alert and to inform and dispatch. And so from a dispatcher's perspective, I want to be sure that whatever we do, we don't overlook the dispatching element in radios. And so, that how we can have this conversation about
Good
how to
point.
build it and who owns it and who operates it and how to integrate it and what's going to work and what's not going to work. But we want to be sure that whatever we do is not done without dispatching participation and guidance. And so I see Martha has her hand up, and I'm happy to have her input.
So, from a dispatching perspective, at least from my years of doing it, what Mount Ascutney, we have a Mount Ascutney repeater group that has several agencies that are on it. The repeaters off of Mount Ascutney. We have a dispatching channel. All the agencies are dispatched off of that one channel. It is part of the rules of that organization that once they're on scene, they go to their fire grounds or their operations channels.
Mhm.
And we also have some other fire departments that we dispatch for. And if you do have all these various frequencies, they start stepping on one another. I think having the toning channel, being able to monitor an operations channel, because if they do hit their Mayday button, or they have a situation, we want to make sure that we're going to pick up on that. So yeah, I mean, that's when I hear about radios, and that's kind of what my question was. Okay, so if we did like a county-wide, I would assume that you would have that paging frequency. You would have other channels that would be fire ground operations.
Yes.
That's what my question was, but that's in a dispatch center. You need a paging frequency, and then you need people to get off the paging frequency and onto their respective fire grounds.
Yes,
And
thank you for that, Martha. Yes, the intent would be certainly from our perspective would be to have multiple channels available wherever possible. Now you have to understand that VHF channels are very difficult to license, and as Joe pointed out, you have to obviously coordinate with the FCC, and in the case of Vermont, coordinate with the Canadian equivalent as well, because they utilize similar frequencies. But certainly multiple channels are necessary in each area wherever they can be established. Any other comments or discussion from the dispatch community or anybody on the call?
I guess the only thing I would add is I think we also need to move away from the single channel paging mechanism which is in place currently, because in most of the dispatch centers, that single channel that's dispatching everybody is not enough. So as an example, in other big systems, fire and EMS are separated on separate paging frequencies, or at least can go to after the page can go to a secondary frequency that is directly linked into dispatch. So like currently our system, one frequency, all traffic's going to dispatch on one frequency. But if we have a mass casualty, we have the flooding, we have a multi-alarm fire, and now we need 10 ambulances. There's just so much traffic on that one single frequency. you can't get your additional resources. So that's a current limitation that I think we definitely need to improve on, is having more frequencies at the dispatch console so that we have that ability.
To be able to tone out on multiple frequencies, is that what I'm hearing, Michael? Because if it's all on one, you have to do it sequentially, and it takes a large amount of time.
Yeah, or the other solution is that you still tone out on that single frequency, but when you're now on the scene,
Right.
you can tell
Right.
tell all the EMS assets go to channel 2, and then that channel 2 EMS command can communicate with dispatch, because there's
Okay.
again just too much traffic. And when you have two, you could have two separate dispatchers, one handling the EMS traffic, and again in a mass casualty situation, and fire being on a separate one.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I agree with that. I think that that just is a sort of a different way to phrase the first discussion about the issue, and it is a constant struggle to get people to get off the dispatch channel and go to a fireground channel. There's absolutely no need for anybody other than the incident commander to be in communications with dispatch once they're on scene. That just sort of like totally avoids the command structure. I think that policing ourselves better would alleviate many of those concerns. It is very difficult to license channels. If you want to
Yes.
put up a repeater on a mountain somewhere, it's not horribly complicated to get channels that are mobile channels. And furthermore, we're losing channels on a daily basis because the FCC's new system for notifying licensees that their license is about to expire no longer sends out paper copies. And they don't even check to make sure that the license includes an email address. And furthermore, the system doesn't send the same email to the contact, which is typically a technical contact and somebody who knows what to do when they get the notice. So I see, agencies to the tune of 3 or 4 a year at least, who need to get their licenses back because somebody looked at the paper copy on the wall and said, "Uh-oh, we have a problem," and they never got an expiration notice. And I've reached out to public safety, and Tracy Simmons is a nice guy down there, but the reality is that the commission needs to change the way that they handle that, or nationwide this is going to become a big problem with frequencies that were issued, the licenses lapsing, and we lose them and they're no longer ours to play with. We need to re-coordinate them and deal with Canada and everything else.
Yeah, that could be a real headache.
Joe
All right,
has
well,
his hand up. We're getting close to, one more
Yeah,
question.
recognizing the time, we probably won't have time to go on to the next item, but I think this was certainly a good discussion, and certainly with the biggest, one of the bigger items that we have to address. It looks like if one more
Joe has a
comment from
comment.
Joe, and then we'll need to go back to the agenda.
Yeah, just as far as the licensing, we're finding that the point of contact is either retired and it goes missed. And so then we have to go back through the process for that. I think that's something that's really important that needs to be focused to. I will make a point that we did address what Michael was saying, and our 16 site system that we're doing will have 2 frequencies connected into dispatch. And that is a huge undertaking with Industry Canada, just alone to be able to do that. So I think that's a valid point, Michael.
So Dom, I'd like to engage in the next meeting to talk about radio procedures, operational and use procedures. So we could talk about not only the technology, but it's how we use the network. I'd like to be able to, if we can, be sure that we have that conversation in our next meeting with with this group.
All right, great. Thank you. Well, that's one of our next steps. Then we also need to continue with the action items. We will record those action items that came out of today's meeting and update the action item table that we can look at and review for the next meeting. Next, we'll be scheduling the next meeting. And I don't believe we have a current one scheduled, as I think this was the last one we had scheduled at this time. But certainly we need further meetings. Does this time work generally for the task force members? Should we try and continue on Fridays?
Works for me.
Works for me.
Works for me.
All right, great. Elizabeth, can I ask you to schedule at least a couple more meetings at this time on Fridays?
Okay, I will plan to send out 2 more meetings unless you think we need more.
Well, let's go with a couple right now.
So we do have a meeting on the calendar for next week, same time, the 8th, August 8th. We don't have one for the 15th.
The 8th
Thank
is,
you, Liz.
Or is that a different
That's
working
tier
group?
Oh yeah,
three.
that's a different group. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Oh, so we'd have a conflict. We have
We have a conflict.
All right,
At
we
the
have
same
to have
time.
we have to have a different time at least for next week.
We could do it. We just have to do a different time.
Meeting tier 3 is at 12:30 to 2
Yep.
next week.
Yes, it is.
Could a 10:30 time slot work for people?
Should work for me.
I can probably make that work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can make it work.
All right. All right, thank you. So Elizabeth will do 10:30 next week and then back to 12:30 on the 15th. All right, Jim, I'll hand it over to you to see if there's any further public comment.
Anybody else have any comments that they'd like to add that we haven't already covered? I see nobody else at this point, so move on to the next item on our agenda, which is for adjournment.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our meeting is adjourned.
All right,
See you
thank
at the
you
next
all.
meeting.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you, everyone.
discussion. Have a
Have a
good
good
Have a
weekend.
great
weekend, everybody.
weekend.
Bye now.
Take care.
Jim.